Let's get it started, baby.
Alright, I've never played this one. Let's do this. Howdy do, my fellow brothers. Honest Hearts is one of the best DLCs, and I got to experience it for the first time. Look at this beautiful landscape. Oh, also you learn about one of the most badass characters in all of Fallout lore. Welcome to this video where I experienced Fallout New Vegas' second DLC, Honest Hearts, for the first time. If you liked the video, comment, like, and subscribe. Also check out my Twitch where I live stream every Thursday at 6 p.m. Mountain Time. Let's start with our initial impressions. I loved it. Okay, end of the video. Seriously though, Honest Hearts was a short but concise experience. I loved the characters I was introduced to, the landscape, that by the way makes me want to visit the real thing because holy crap does it look majestic, and the amount of weapons you get from this DLC, chef's kiss. All around, I personally ranked it above Dead Money. I think Dead Money had some pacing issues, mainly the annoying ticking bombs, but the story and companions were great. On the other hand, I didn't have that issue when playing Honest Hearts. If anything, I wanted to explore and do everything in Zion Canyon, as I was enthralled by the scenery and the more sunshiny vibes. I don't hate dark, scary, and spooky, but I felt that there was so much of that since playing Fallout New Vegas that I wanted something not involving a vault or dark, spooky caverns. Really, the only thing I noticed later was the companions. They were not as fleshed out, but I didn't mind it, as if anything, I used them as just pack mules. Starting from the beginning, our mighty Lord and Savior, Johnny Shrimp, yep, that's me, heard a radio broadcast from a small caravan company named the Happy Trails Caravan Company. You see, they're recruiting the biggest and baddest mercenaries they can get. You can all guess what I did. As I made my way to the cave, we met the team. Jed Masterson, the leader with a suave pimp voice, the wonderful Stella, who seemingly can't stay in one place, and Ricky. If you can't tell already, Ricky is a dummy. A man claiming to know everything and yet doesn't know crap. Seriously, even that Pip-Boy of his doesn't work, and somehow he convinced everyone that he should lead them through the canyon safely. So with a little magic, I convinced him to leave. I also tried killing him, but that did not work. Jed lets us know about the job. We gotta reach New Canaan, shut our trap and not mention Joshua Graham or the Burning Man to the locals for whatever reason, and defend ourselves from the Whitelegs, a dangerous group of feral natives living in Zion. That's the prelude before officially starting the second DLC. Once the movie plays, well, we learn about Joshua Graham. You see, he was a New Canaanite, a group of religious people from Utah. Sound familiar? Yeah, Mormons. Joshua somehow became the first war chief in Caesar's Legion. You know, the main bad guys in the game, and yes, they are bad. Kinda hard to defend a group that enslaves, burns, and kills tribals and anything obstructing their path. Not to say other groups are any better, but vastly more able to keep their empire running than a singular tyrant. Anyways, even the narrator can't help but to slobber on the man's glizzy.
Legend goes that Graham was the meanest, toughest son of a bitch in the whole damn Legion.
After failing a mission, Joshua was lit on fire, damn son, and kicked out. Dude didn't even make a squeak through all that pain. Like a true legend, the man didn't die but disappeared, and rumors spread of the burned man traveling the waste once more. That's how the DLC begins. Of course, my team got squad wiped, which, I mean, dude, you guys talk such big game and you got your asses handed to you, son. I really try to protect everybody, but I'm gonna be honest, my aim was not hitting. So with everyone dead, I only had one choice: loot everyone's bodies. Yeah, I feel bad, but like, they have good ass shit. Luckily, we meet a new friend, except he looks like Chavo del Ocho. Yeah, he looks a little ridiculous and his English is up to snuff, so hey, let's follow him. Luckily, they're not cannibals, and I'm not Christopher Columbus. And since this game is fast-paced, we get to meet the man, the myth, the legend, Joshua Graham. Joshua Graham, what can I say that hasn't been said already? The guy is just cool. I mean, he has the swagger, he has the drip, and better yet, the guy has the anger to go around shooting the shit out of anyone crossing him. And it turns out, the Legion may have done just that, because Joshua is now helping out the tribe known as Dead Horse. Yeah, it's not the best name. I mean, already it has dead in it. The Whitelegs are trying to join the Legion, and the Legion has tasked them to get rid of all the other tribes in Zion. And that is why Joshua is trying to help. Well, that and the fact that he can get his revenge. With no need for convincing, I go ahead and help out Joshua and the tribes. I get sent out to do some fetch quests, which honestly not worth noting. I mean, they were just simple quests, really. Nothing too hard. But the fact remains, the combat during this whole time was just fun, and exploring the canyon even better. The thing is, the map for Honest Hearts is just so beautiful, dude. I genuinely loved being outside, although these giant bears, a little freaky. Around this time, I got introduced to the Stay Back and Riot Shotgun, and let me just say, it makes combat trivial, but also hilarious. Personally, I love using shotguns for when I hunt. Soon after, we also meet the Sorrows, another tribe that's getting their ass beat. They're a bit more pacifisty, but there's a whole thing with them that I personally love. That's also when we meet Waking Cloud, this lady with a humongous claw for her hand, which I love, and you can actually get one. The Sorrows tend to mention Father in the Cave, which we will go over at the end of the video because personally it's the most amazing thing I had run into accidentally and ended up researching for hours and loving what I found. We meet a new Canaanite member named Daniel who decided to stay with the Sorrows and help them out as a de facto leader. Daniel and Joshua's philosophies clash since Daniel believes in a more pacifist approach, wanting the Sorrows to leave Zion without fighting. Daniel adores the fact that the Sorrows are kind, innocent, and mourn the deaths of anyone. His mission is their protection, but also to try and convert them to Mormonism. Daniel outright dreads the fact that this tribe could one day turn into a warlike entity. Due to this, he tries getting us to convince Joshua to follow his ideals, and maybe it would have worked if I didn't end up in the cave. Remember the Sorrows mentioning Father in the Cave? Well, let me introduce you to the baddest man we never got to see. As I mentioned before, I accidentally ended up in the caves and found these notes left behind by a mysterious man. At first it didn't make sense because I read the notes out of order, but over time I ran into more and more of his caves that were filled with traps, and more importantly, loads of supplies, weapons, and armor. What got me hooked on the caves was this special Desert Ranger armor that belonged to this mysterious person, but this story is so special that I reserved it for the end, so stay tuned. After finishing the cave, we met Joshua outside of the Sorrows camp, and he wanted us to convince Daniel to have the Sorrows fight for their home and not run away. Remember that bear claw from Waking Cloud? It's time for us to obtain our own. You see, the Sorrows have a tradition that involves the mutated Yao Guai. This time, it is up to us to hunt the ghost of She, a legend involving a little girl too smart for her own good. She left the tribe to play in a cave, unaware of the dangers within that led to her death. Because she died before her naming day, her soul was restless and wandered the earth. And since the Yao Guai killed her, the two had become one. So I drink some shaman piss, start blasting. The Yao Guai are no threat to my riot shotgun, but the ghost of She is not an ordinary bear. It's a fire bear. Motherfucker used some Shadow Clone Jutsu shit on me. Luckily, the gun wins over ninja skills. Oh yeah, we done got a pimp glove. Slap a bitch with that hand, why don't ya? Turns out that the game ends really quick, so this DLC picked up faster than I thought, and when I was editing it, well, yeah, we're kind of at the end. Short video, huh? So let's talk about the man, the myth, the legend, Randall Dean Clark. You see, the man in the cave was not a god. As a matter of fact, quite the opposite. It was just a normal man. You see, Randall served in the military before the war. For the US Army, of course. Not these commie bastards. Clark was returning home when suddenly his car engine went out. The elderly couple driving next to him was also stalled, and that's when he knew an EMP had just been activated. Taking cover, the first nukes fell within minutes. Flashes so bright the world looked on fire. He could hear the old couple screaming as they lost their vision. 13 bombs in 7 minutes is all it took to wipe away the world he knew. Once the bombardment stopped, he looked towards Salt Lake City, where his home once was, knowing his family was no more. Clark grabbed his pack and rifle, but before leaving, he sat the old couple down together, telling them that help would arrive soon. Letting them hold each other in their arms, he pulled up his rifle. One bullet, instant, an act of mercy. Clark was a survivalist and a badass at that, but his most important trait was his anguish. It made him human. He couldn't save his family, and now he was alone, wishing every other day to take his own life. But he lived on, seeing the changes around him, from no life to mutated plants, bugs, and big animals, even seeing humans, but staying away, fearing that they were cannibals, or worse. Clark even found a Mexican family that he kept tabs on, seeing their day-to-day actions, never intruding until one day, one of the men fell and broke his leg. In an effort to help, Clark decided to imitate the man's voice, calling for help, getting the attention of all the others. And that's when they found him. But Clark knew that the man would probably not survive this. But he couldn't leave the man to his fate, and he decided to leave a bottle of antibiotics. And that's when the people thanked God, or Dios, as he put it. By the time we found the next journal entry, things got way worse. You see, that family that he was keeping an eye on got attacked, and many of them were killed, with only 2 adult women, 5 children staying alive. They were kept in pens. You see, the group that attacked them is a group that we came to know in our adventures in the Wasteland, the Vault 22 survivors. If you don't remember, Vault 22 was experimenting on a lot of plants and animals, and at one point with spores. These spores ended up infecting the residents, and they became these green ghoulish creatures. These vault dwellers were armed to the teeth, and even though Randall was gonna organize a rescue mission, on February 14th, Vault 22 residents had eaten the 2 women and children. Angering Randall, he began to ambush ambushed the Vault 22 residents, killing multiple of them using grenades, booby traps, and everything else he had on hand. As we read through the logs, Randall was efficient. He was killing 6 to 8 people every ambush, although he did take a bullet near the femoral artery, but he managed to get lucky. In just 10 days, there was 24 confirmed kills. They did find Randall's cave, but he got extremely lucky as they ended up falling into his traps. Knowing that they were so close, Randall packed up and headed out. Randall is a demon, and the man in 10 months had essentially eviscerated the whole Vault 22 army. Randall one day woke up to screaming, and that's when he found Sylvie, a woman that triggered a bear trap. She was one of the Vault residents, except she had run away. And according to her, it was terrible to be a woman in that group. One can only imagine what would happen to them. Once again, time passed by, and it turns out that Sylvie and Randall were having a child. This again terrified Randall. He was going to be a father again at 47 and in this new world, and he was excited but scared. He felt guilty, but at the same time, this new future, he could make up for the mistakes he had done in the past, even asking for forgiveness from his previous wife. On March 5th, his son was born, Michael, but unfortunately the baby did not make it, and Sylvie never woke up. He buried them south of the Narrows, and this time he was by their side. That's when Randall wrote, "I think I can finally do it. Blow my fucking brains out all over this goddamn cave." Later down the line, it turns out that the ghouls have started to come up. Thinking he was going crazy, he realized he wasn't, and the rotting smell of the corpses chasing after him, he had to do something he didn't know he had to. Put them out of their misery. All of them. By 2113, Randall turned 60. An old man, you could say, and ready to drink some whiskey with a 12 gauge up to the roof of the mouth. But even though he was a shriveled old man with a white beard, for some reason he still couldn't do it. And by the morning of February 6th, he once again didn't pull the trigger, hoping that maybe next year it would happen. By 2123, April 25th, there was 24 children, half boys and half girls. The youngest being 8, while the oldest being 13 or 14. The children were in the same spot as the Mexican family prior. He spent 2 nights listening to them. Apparently they escaped a place called the school and a bad person named the principal. Let's just say the children didn't know they had a guardian angel, because if the principal was even 100 feet away from the children, his head would have been shot clean off. The final entries of Randall Dean Clark's journal is bittersweet, and I hope that you enjoy this last bit of his life as I did, because I was enthralled by it. I was inspired, and I felt empty inside. But at the same time, it gave me an urge to fight back, an urge for hope. By 2124, Randall knew that his time was gonna come. His age was catching up to him. During this time, Randall began leaving the children gifts and notes. It started with books, then weapons, medical books, and practical items. Although embarrassed by his newfound doting, he wanted them to learn to read and make use of their surroundings. He mentioned giving them Zion as a gift, to make up for all the sorrows in their life. He wanted them to be kind to one another, to never hurt anyone, unless they struck first, in which case they should retaliate with, quote, righteous anger. He signed every note as the father. Randall lets us know that he's dying from cancer. His last wish was wanting to lie down and to stare at the sky before passing. His hopes were that the children would survive. They would be kind to one another and handle everything on their own. He would still be watching and caring in silence. A lie? Yeah. But the children didn't have to know that. Randall thought of the loved ones he had lost, and even though he would have loved to have joined them sooner, his body kept acting on its own, fighting to survive no matter what. At the end of his life, he wished them all well. The experience was a gift, and he got to see the innocence he had never seen before. With one last breath, he said goodbye to Zion, and he signed off Randall Dean Clark, February 5th, 2053 to January 2124. A grown man could cry, but if we learn anything from Randall, it was to keep going. If they ever decide to make a standalone film about Randall Dean Clark's life, let me just say that it will become one of the most beloved movies of all time. New Vegas fans would quite literally be bricked up. Now is the time to choose a side. Do we go with Daniel and his pacifism and run away? Or do we go with Joshua, who wants them to fight for their land? After experiencing everything with Randall Dean Clark's entries, we knew the answer. The Sorrows have to fight for what's right. They have to fight for their land. They have to defeat the Whitelegs. And a war raged on. It looked kinda silly, not gonna lie to you, and also I was incredibly heavy because I really wanted to hoard all the weapons, but I had to stash away some things because it was not gonna work. After fighting our way through Zion Canyon, we made it to the last bit. Joshua executes the 2 Whitelegs. And there we have it, Salt upon Wounds, kneeling, begging for his life. You see, this was a crucial juncture for not only Joshua, but the Sorrows. We annihilated all the Whitelegs, and it was only Salt upon Wounds that was left. One man couldn't do anything, and this was the time to show what righteous fury is. Joshua believes in completely wiping out the Whiteleg, but if there's anything that we learned, sometimes mercy alleviates the rage within your own heart. Joshua needed it, and the Sorrows needed to see it so that they wouldn't become barbaric war criminals, but instead people who fight for what's right, people who would fight for their own home, and people that would show forgiveness and kindness in a world that stripped everything away. That was it. That was Honest Hearts, possibly one of my favorite DLCs of all time. I hope you all enjoyed this video, and stay tuned for anything coming soon. Just so you can see how our actions affected the game, here's the last slide of Fallout New Vegas' Honest Hearts.
And so it was that the conflict between the New Canaanites and the Whitelegs was finally resolved. The courier's involvement had tipped the scale, shifting the fragile balance of power.
Demoralized by the Dead Horse and Sorrow's attack the courier and Joshua Graham led against them, the Whitelegs retreated to Great Salt Lake. Their days were numbered. Word soon reached the 80s tribe that the Whiteleg's spirit was broken, their war chief a dim shadow of his former self. By year's end, the 80s would overrun the Whitelegs' camps, scattering the tribe to the winds and claiming the Great Salt Lake for its own.
The Sorrows fought beside Joshua Graham and the Dead Horses, eradicating the threat the Whitelegs posed to Zion. Seeing the courier convince Joshua Graham to spare Salt upon Wounds, the Sorrows learned that retribution could be tempered by mercy. Though he despaired at the Sorrows' loss of innocence, Daniel took some small consolation in the courier's lesson, and prayed it would take root.
Having helped eradicate the Whitelegs from Zion, the Dead Horses returned to Dead Horse Point in triumph. They remained neutral toward the Sorrows, but as years went on, there were periods of competitive friction, even violence between the tribes. The New Canaanites, Daniel especially, intervened regularly as mediators, but found it difficult to reconcile the tribe's conflicts.
The defeat of the Whitelegs in Zion marked a turning point in the fortunes of the Happy Trails Caravan Company. Every 2 months, the caravan met with the New Canaanites in Zion Valley to trade. Happy Trails soon returned to prosperity. The vigilance of the Sorrows and Dead Horses in defending southwestern Utah, initially startling to Happy Trails caravans, soon proved a blessing. The tribes united against the 80s, driving them back from Highway 50, and thus opening yet another trading route for Happy Trails caravans.
The threat of the Whitelegs ended. Joshua Graham helped the Sorrows and Dead Horses tend to their fallen comrades and secure Zion. The courier's words had stayed Joshua's wrath in his darkest hour, and in sparing Salt upon Wounds, he was changed. While he continued to advocate militant opposition to the enemies of New Canaan, he sometimes showed quarter to those who crossed his family. Eventually, this new spirit would diminish the myth of the burned man in distant lands. A small price for the peace it brought to Joshua Graham.
For years after the defeat of the Whitelegs, Daniel did his best to minister to the Sorrows' spiritual needs. Try as he might, he could not hold back the tribe's increasing militancy and reverence of Joshua Graham. Demoralized, he returned to his family and Dead Horse Point. His failures haunted him for the rest of his days.
And with that, the courier walked out of the history of the tribes of Zion and back to the gathering storm of the Mojave Wasteland.